Welcome to Patrick's Scale Studio. My name's Patrick. I'll be your host. This is Build Video 17B, which is the second part of the two-part video 17. First one being the assembly of all of this, and the second part being the painting of it and getting all these painted parts put onto there for more complete structure, and then we'll get this put onto the ship. So this is going to entail me showing you what I've done here with the painting, unmasking, and then we're going to do a little bit of assembly, some decals, clear coat, and then we're going to throw it on the ship. And then probably go over a few railings here and there. I'm not going to do them all because there's so many railings to this ship that it would just bore you to tears. So we'll start off here with what I've painted. So these right here are all of the little funnels that go on the top of this funnel structure here. And these three all have their photo etch ladder rungs installed. Let's see if I can get that. There you go. You can just barely make them out there. They're very, very tiny pieces. But there's 5 individual rungs and then one little ladder that goes beneath that. I've done that on all 3 of these. The outside of those 3 are painted in, to me, as NATO black. And then the inside is painted with, to me, as flat black to give a little bit more depth. And when we're all done, everything's said and done, I'm probably going to add a little bit of soot pigment in there to kind of help deepen that and avoid any further light reflection so you can't see that there's a bottom to these. Moving on here, we got a couple parts that are in flat white. This right here goes to the close-in weapon system, and this right here looks like some sort of an ammunition locker or something like that that goes on the ship. That particular piece goes on a deck right up here. And then the other part that I painted white is right here, which is the close-in weapon system. And as you can see, there's a little bit of masking tape to it, which we'll go ahead and peel off. Because I also did a little extra painting on this. I'll move you aside so I don't break anything. And we'll see here is if you look at the online pictures of this ship, you'll see that some of the later photos show that there's like a panel on each side of this that is not white. It's kind of like an off-white with a kind of a turquoise color, or just a mix between blue and green. So I'm going to go ahead and start to get that off for the reveal. There we go, there's the other edge. And this is always the fun part, is taking off the masking to see where your paint leaked. Alright, so we can see there, we got some one of the side panels. There's the other side panel. So there's that. And then everything else for the most part got the XF12 color right here. All these pieces right here, XF12. I believe this was a targeting radar. These two right here that I did in my last short little video on showed how to assemble these. So they are good to go. Here's the mount for the close-in weapon system. You can actually come off. Alright, and then we'll get to our main piece here, which I've saved the unmasking, at least a little bit of that, for everyone to have a look at. But I did this in a similar manner that I did everything else. Laid down the deck color right there, masked it off, and then hit everything here with a dark gray. To me, it's dark gray. I believe it's XF24. And what that does is provide a little bit of pre-shading right there. And then after that, went over everything with the XF12. And usually kind of at even level or a from up above angle right there to kind of help keep some of these very slight shadows, fake shadows underneath parts. And then also on a lot of these, you can probably see it a little bit better right there, I kind of varied the airbrush strokes right there to kind of help give the final color a little bit of depth. So that said, we'll go ahead and get on to the unmasking. Okay, now I've got to say, unmasking parts on a model after a good airbrushing session, I can't think of anything that's just much more satisfying. Besides that, just that really good validation of hard work and time and patience put into something. In this case, I'm really happy. It was just my own stupidity that knocked a ladder off and knocked this one loose down here at the bottom. So those should be easy enough to repair. I'll probably pull this one off all the way so I can re-glue it. I want to be able to put in there. But all in all, this masking and painting session went incredibly well and very much to plan. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive into getting everything put into place on this here after I get those ladders back on off camera. So be back in just a second. Okay, so I got the ladders put back in place without any major mishaps or disasters. So we'll go ahead and proceed with getting some of this stuff put onto here as it's supposed to be, that we skipped over on page 33, starting with this section right here. You can see we've got a couple D20s, we've got a little J1, B63, D14, and B40. So we'll go ahead and work on getting those put into place now. Just a little bit of CA glue and our trusty toothpick. All right, this part is keyed. There we go. By the way, I had difficulty locating any actual picture references of the ship, this particular area, so I'm not 100% sure that that is the positive or the correct color, but I just went with how the vertical launch tubes were painted, this XF12, and stuck with that there. So if I am incorrect, hopefully you can point that out to me and I can go back in and paint it. If it was going to be a different color, I would have to imagine it would be something like dark gray. All right, here we got that in place. Turn this guy around. Now these two pieces appear in flat black right now, or primer black, I should say, because I'm going to paint them aluminum. When I could find it looked like they were aluminum. They were kind of like ventilation caps or something like that you might see over various buildings and things like that. Kind of let fumes or heat or something out, but not let weather or rain get in. Okay, that's in place. Go ahead and get this guy in next. Okay, that's in there, and go ahead and get this part in there. How about this? Okay. Sorry for the dead air. Or you possibly heard me talking to myself. I tend to find, though, that I hold a pretty good conversation with myself because I'm never wrong when I'm arguing with myself. All right, so we got that chunk in. So next up is going to be this chunk right here. Let me go ahead and get the parts for that. Be right back. Next up is this little area right here. It looks like this is a large antenna on a pivot and the rest for it. And then the life raft canisters are actually going to go on the racks that they belong on. So go ahead and get this out of the way and get to work on that. Now, interestingly enough, while I was looking around online at pictures of the real deal, I noticed that I'm not really seeing this antenna on any of the more recent configurations or pictures of Curtis Wilbur. So I just have to conclude that it's probably no longer there and removed, which is odd that I Love Kit decided to include it. But for the most part, we'll just go with what we've got in the kit right now, rather than try for 100% accuracy. If we're going to go for 100% accuracy, then I'm going to be rolling back the clock quite a bit. Another thing I found here with the kit was this part right there, I think was short shot when it was molded, because there's in Q41 there's a hole right there, and you can see it right there. And I believe, let me get this straightened out here, I believe the intention was for there to be a pin on this antenna piece that fits into that hole. Well, this circular part was not there. So I kind of went off of what was in the instructions and took a piece of sprue and cut it. So I did not get a pin there, but I figure a little bit of CA glue should help us. And put it right there. All right. I'll roll some of that back off of there. And what I'm also going to do is put some in its little rest, or little cradle. And we'll go ahead and handle this a little bit. All right. So there we go. So far, so good. Not perfect just yet, though. There we go. Now that is in place as the kit is designed. But apparently not as how the real ship is, as she is today. But again, in the interest of building as the kit would have you build, that's that. Now, next up, for these wonderful little life raft canisters. Sorry if my hands are getting in the way. And so for the most part, one thing I've been kind of just dealing with is with the paint. I'm not usually used to putting down so many parts with CA glue after paint because that just is not an ideal hold. But the clear coat, when the clear coat comes, should provide an additional fixative agent for these parts. And I'm just going to have to reconcile with that and take extra special precaution in subsequent finishing procedures. Sorry, you can probably hear the frog in my throat. It is springtime in Ohio. Spring is in full swing, and with that comes all the wonderful allergies. All right, so there we go. Once you've got the first couple worked out, and the rest usually follow pretty quickly. I actually think these look cooler than the ones up front on the superstructure. And just neat how they're doubled up on these racks. All right, there we go. Just about there. I'm gonna get these done, and then we should be able to move on to getting some of the other parts on here, like the fire director radars and the close-in weapon system. Speaking of which, while I was off camera, I also went ahead and painted the barrel of this black, so we'll be ready to put this brace over top of it. But that concludes page 33. So we are all done with page 33, step 37. Be right back in just a second. Okay, so now we're on to this section right here where we've got this large antenna, B25, and the 3 funnels. I'm going to leave off any of these little antennas until I get the railings in place, because these antennas all look like they exist outside of the railings. So we're going to go ahead and do this in the order of B25 first, then the funnels, and then that long antenna, because that thing is praying to get broken off. So I'll move this out to the side. We'll go ahead and get started. You know what? It's just going to be easier to do it like this. And something I did off camera prior to hitting the record button for this video was get all the holes widened out enough to make sure that the parts would be accepted into their respective locations. That said, some of it's still a bit tight. It's in place now. Now, for instance, these funnels are particularly difficult to get into their spots. One of the nice properties I've noticed of CA in the past is it acts as a wonderful lubricant of sorts for getting parts located. So And a little spillage outside is okay because these caps are going to cover it. As with the funnel caps on the superstructure, the ladder rungs all face the flat spot. You can see you really have to press it in there. Get this small one next. Another nice thing about having a clear coat afterwards is some of the shiny spots that you're going to get from using CA. And if you've been doing this long enough, then you know it's inevitable. Eventually you're going to get glossy, shiny spots showing up from CA. Is the clear coat will help mask that, make that go away. And then in the very end, after you've gotten all the decals and weathering applied, and you put on that final flat coat, then you will forget they were ever there. All right. And you can see it's just on. Okay, yes. All three are situated in place and look the part. That's fantastic. So last but not least for this step is this wonderful antenna. So just be mindful after you put this guy in, watch where you're handling it. All right, now it's gonna have a little backward rake. I want to make sure it's going straight up and down with the center line of the ship, but that it has a rake to the aft end of the ship. All right, there we go. So that section is complete. Okay, so next we're going to finish the assembly of the close-in weapon system. Go ahead and start this with putting, I think this is a shroud of some sort on there. Well, it's still loose. A little bit of CA glue here. This is in no way load bearing, so a little bit goes a long way. It's in place. Next up, this right here. This piece right here on the side looks like some kind of a direction finder or a range finder. There we go. And last but not least, no glue required for this, as we'll get this put in. You know what, I went ahead and put that into its mount off camera. As you can see, I was having a little bit of difficulty there while I was on camera, so went off camera and was able to kind of manhandle it in there. There's not really a good way of getting it in there, because this mount is one piece. The base of the actual weapon is one piece, so it's like just got to jam it in there. It fits nicely, so I'll go ahead and throw a little CA glue in there. Alright, that's in place, and this is not glued. It's movable or positionable if I need to put it into a different arrangement. But for right now, there it is. And last up, except for antennas and railings, we have these. And I'm just, for the most part, I get them in there. All right, everything fits wonderfully, so we'll go ahead and again put in a little bit of CA glue. I'm going to get a fresh toothpick. And it's, for me, it's important to use the medium or thick. Allow me some time to work and get these into a position that I want. There we go. Try to make sure everyone can see on there. And if you like working time with CA glue, then another general rule of thumb is the more you apply, the longer the working time. I'd say the only exception of that is thin CA, but that's because thin CA glue is a friend of Mr. Murphy, who likes to enforce his law every chance he gets, and that's when you get CA thumbprints and fingerprints all over your finished work. So at this point, I'm going to clear coat things. I'm going to put down some decals. There's only two that I'm putting on here. Like the superstructure, I'm leaving that red warning stuff off of here. There's just not enough room really to put that on as it's supposed to be on there, which is on the sides and not on the top. Older pictures indicate that red warning was on the top. That's originally how I had envisioned it, but the instructions for this kit and the way the decals are made out is it's on the side. Well, that would mean then that warning stripe is covering part of this hatch. It's going to go over top of this. It's going to get in the way of these cameras and all this other fun stuff. So rather than wrestle with that headache, I'm just going to completely avoid that headache. And in the end, I think it'll look okay. But yeah, stay tuned for the clear coat and decals. Okay, so went ahead and got this clear coated. No reason to really show any video footage of that. It just satin clear varnish going over top of this. But that is a preparatory step I'm going to use to lay down two decals. This should be pretty short for decaling session. Just number 12. There's two of them. It's this right here, and it goes on either side, right around that vicinity right there. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and put this aside, and we'll start off with getting one of these wet. All right, sit there and continue allowing that water to work on the adhesive. Meanwhile, I'll take some wonderful micro set. Can't stress enough, if you don't have something to hold the bottles upright, just to try to make sure you close them after every time you get some on your brush. It will prevent any catastrophes should that fall over, because those bottles are very prone to falling over. Now, this is going to be a little difficult to show, but I will show you the finished product afterwards. And moving just fine. Alright, and let's go ahead. And now I can show you moving it around. Its placement is actually just about where I want it, right off the get-go. Go ahead and start kind of tamping it down. Now, I know there's a huge controversy over putting down a clear coat before decaling. A lot of folks say you don't need to. I have tried it that way, and I have ended up with results that are just the same as if I had clear coated it. But I have also had other cases where it's mixed results. But if I clear coat it, I haven't had problems. So just to be on the safe side, I'm clear coating. So there is the first number 12 in place. I'll go ahead and get the second number 12 in place. And pretty much just the same location as the first one, but in reverse. All right, and again, a bit of micro set on the brush. Closing up my bottle. As many of you are aware of from previous videos, Mr. Murphy and I do not get along. So I am not going to give him any opportunity to affect my work if I can help it. All right. Now, I'm going to move this one aside a little bit. Just a Okay. Happy with that placement there. So again, I'm going to go ahead and tamp it down in place. So micro set is working underneath it. While that's working, I'll go ahead and rinse the cheap brush that I use for decaling. Get the micro set out of it so I can move on to micro sol. And micro sol is something I'm not going to dry up with a Q-tip. I'm just going to apply it over top of the decal, being very gentle. Because if you go about scraping at it with the brush, especially a cheap brush with stiff bristles, you run the risk of it moving the decal around. But that's all she wrote for those two decals. Go ahead and set that aside. Next step is going to be detail painting. Okay, so the decals have dried. The microsol is dried. The decals almost look painted on. There's just a touch of surrounding decal film and puts off a little shine, and it's got a different shine gradient than the rest of the surrounding structure. But another clear coat will help blend that in perfectly as it has on the whole already. So with that, we're going to enter a speed round of detail painting. I say speed round just because I'm going to speed everything up while I'm doing it with a little bit of music in the background, but be using Tamiya's XF7 flat red, and this right here will go in places on the tops of the fire hose bundles. I'll be using this color. This is not XF35. This is just a mix I made up of myself. It's kind of a yellowish orange, and that will be for the actual fire hoses. This right here is more of a red orange, and that will be for these life rings. Flat silver, which is Tamiya XF16, and that will be for these caps right here, look like ventilation caps. And then some Tamiya's XF2, and this right here will go into places along the little rings on those life rings right there. So that, and I might be able to touch up any other places that were white and need to be touched up. So we'll see. But sit back, relax to the music, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so next step before I put all this onto the hole in the deck is railings. That's what I've got in my hand right now, and I'm going to go out of order of the instructions. The instructions would have us start on these railings with this lower deck here, and I don't want to do that because sometimes I rest my finger or something like that on some of these lower parts to attach the higher up railings. So with that in mind, I'm going to start my way up here and work my way down. So I will eventually be coming back to this. But the final goal is to get it to here. All the railings and everything on this piece ready to go down on the hull. So with that in mind, I will go ahead and put this first one up here on camera, and I'm going to do the rest off camera, and we'll come back to it. If anything comes up during that process, I will be sure to touch base on that in the follow-up segment in this video. Okay? So go ahead and get started here. So while I'm doing this, I'm also going to talk about some of the prep that I've gotten done in the meantime, and that's just on my photo etch frets. They've gotten primed, and then I airbrushed the XF12 onto them on top of that. And I've given this several days to completely cure, completely dry. It's as hard as it's going to get. That said, there's going to be some paint and color loss on this when you start to bend everything up together. That's just the nature of the beast. But what you can do is come back afterwards with a tiny little paintbrush and touch up with the colors. You want to do that prior to doing any kind of weathering or anything like that, so that you are not causing a bright spot in what otherwise might be a little dark and dull from your weathering process. So I'm just touching a little glue here in a few little spots, because the CA is going to cause some bright spots, and those bright spots are going to be nice and shiny, and you really don't want that to be too much, showing up too much. We can go over all this, of course, with a clear coat, but just to try to prevent anything unnecessary, try to limit our CA glue usage. That's in place. With the medium gap filling CA glue that I use, I'm going to give this, it says 5 to 10 seconds, but I usually play it safe and go for about 20 to 30 seconds before I move on or start trying to flip this around or do anything with it. Also, as pointed out here, there's going to be some bright spots of the brass. We're going to have to go back and touch those up afterwards, but using a teeny tiny little paintbrush to do that versus painting the entire thing afterwards is much more preferable method. So we got that in place there. Next up, we're going to do this, then this around here, and then these bases right here. And like I said earlier, I'm going to do that off camera. When we come back in the next segment, we'll start putting in the little antennas on place. Okay, so see you in a sec. Okay, so all of the railings are done. I don't know how well they're coming out for you, but I can tell you I probably could have made an entire video just on attaching the railings to this. And now the piece is very, very fragile. So we will approach with care, even more care than when we're just working around that antenna. Speaking of antennas, I've got 3 little antennas here that I need to attach to here. I already put one on back here because it was kind of in the order of things when I was going with the railings from the top down. So I wanted to get that on there so I could rest my hand on part of the piece while I was putting it in there. So the other antennas all are pretty much at this first deck level. So we'll go ahead and get those done now. As you can see, they are just a bit fiddly to work with. There we go. Just dip a little end in our CA and put it where it goes. All right, that one's in. Sometimes turning around I'll give you a different perspective so that you can make adjustments. This is the next one here. Again, just dipping a little bit of NCA. Here we go. And our very last one here. Okay, so that's complete. The antennas are in place, the railings are in place. There's a few bright spots of brass I'm going to touch up on my own off camera. There's nothing really special to see there other than just taking tiny little blobs of XF12 and gently touching it onto those railings in order to make some of those bright brass spots disappear. But our final step for this video is going to be mounting this to the hull. So I'll bring that piece over, be back in just a second. Alrighty, so here we are, last step of this video here. I'm going to attach this down to here, and then we'll have a look at it from the side, just to kind of admire our handiwork so far. So I'm going to, again, use the Model Master Liquid Cement for plastic models. Great applicator, but it's a little bit thicker, and I feel like I get better results as far as the hold. It takes a little bit longer for curing, and that's okay. Because what we want to be sure of is we get maximum hold on this. It might not be load bearing, but it's important when we come back to hold this to the side or do weathering and such. We don't have parts falling off. And there it goes. It just dropped into place and it fits like a glove. Turn it to the side, no seam. Side here, again, no seam. And all around, I'm very, very pleased with the results so far. So we'll briefly touch on our next steps here, and that is going to be in terms of doing something like we're going to check out another clear coat, and we're going to do a pin wash and some oil weathering, and then we're going to put down a flat coat over top of this. And we also got to put a flat coat down on the bridge assembly as well, because after that, then I got to put in windows and I got to start working on a plan for the rigging here. So something that I did not see earlier on in the instructions on here, it didn't occur to me, there are actually railings back here for the rigging, and I didn't think that was present originally. So that's handy and helpful. I just need to figure out how to secure that back here so that it doesn't come off when we start using some of the easy line in order to put the rigging in. But other than that, we are really quickly drawing to a close on this project, I'm happy to say. So there's not a whole lot left to it. Probably get the rest accomplished in several more videos. So I thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or any feedback, please leave that in the comment section below. And until I see you next time, stay safe and happy modeling.